In this video, we're going to talk about essay development in the context of the chaser, and we'll also look at a full color-coded version of an essay using the structure that we've discussed for introductions, body paragraphs, and conclusions, so that you can see what a full essay at this Introduction to College English level will look like. The first thing that I have for you is basically an outline for a series of body paragraphs related to a thesis statement that I provide you in an essay development activity. At a certain point in this video, I'm going to ask you to pause the video, go to the Distributed Documents tab on Omnivox, access this document, and then essentially compose a practice body paragraph on your own. Using those, you can compare what you've done to the essay that I have provided. Now, obviously, every body paragraph is going to look different. The way you analyze and interpret quotations will be different. The argument that you advance in the topic sentence will be different. So it's not a direct one-to-one comparison regarding what you've said and what I've written as somehow being the only way that you can interpret these quotations and develop them. But compare the body paragraph and how it functions in its development of an argument against those that I present. Think about the structure of that body paragraph that you're writing and the ones that I produce using the kind of guidelines from the Heritage College English Handbook. So, the activity that I have here for you. In an essay, body paragraphs support and prove the thesis. Remember that we're always dealing with arguments here. You have a main argument in your thesis statement, the last sentence of your introduction, and then your body paragraphs exist to take some small element, some piece of the overall argument, and then develop it in greater detail, or to develop a supporting point for that thesis. Each body paragraph develops a main idea focusing on a specific aspect of the story. For instance, a literary device, a plot point, an element of characterization, or the like. So, if I was to give you this essay question, what does John Collier's The Chaser argue about cynicism? You would have to develop a thesis statement that responds directly to that question. A response that includes all the necessary elements of an appropriate thesis statement could be something to the effect of John Collier's The Chaser, so I have the author's last name, or the author's name rather, and the title of the story, shows that cynicism is more healthy than idealism as the former leads people to live safer and more productive lives. Now, I could just have cynicism is more healthy than idealism. That would be a thesis, but it wouldn't be nearly as strong as the full thesis that I provided here because that thesis statement would lack a bit of specificity. It leaves the reader of your essay wondering, well, why is it more healthy? You need to explain the argument a little more fully. In the introduction that preceded this sample thesis, obviously you would have your introduction to the topic, your elaboration on the topic of cynicism and idealism, you would introduce the story and then the three main ideas that you would discuss, and then in the body of the essay you would have a correlation between main idea 1, body paragraph 1, main idea 2, body paragraph 2, main idea 3, body paragraph 3. Now, to develop this thesis statement in the context of a body paragraph, we have a series of exercises here that I'd like you to complete on your own time. First, I have divided up body paragraph 1 and body paragraph 2 by providing you with a series of quotations from the story. What I'd like you to do is to try to find a supporting argument for the thesis using these quotations. So take a look at the 3 quotations on Alan Austen and try to develop a body paragraph using at least pieces of them. You don't have to use all of this quotation. You don't have to present it as such. You might just want to take, "This is love," or something like that. So just use some piece of each of these 3 quotations, right, to develop a body paragraph with 3 supporting points inside of it. So 3 integrated, analyzed, and interpreted quotations. So try to find a supporting argument for the thesis using those quotations. Combine that supporting argument with a literary device to make a topic sentence. Now that could be something as simple as the characterization of Alan Austen. You might get more specific than that about how he's characterized or what he does or how he grows and changes in order to make that topic sentence a little bit more precise rather than just saying characterization. You'd still be discussing characterization, but you have some leeway with respect to how you want to frame and phrase that argument. Now, normally in a full class, if we were doing this as a synchronous activity, you would check this topic sentence with me. Forgo that for the moment, ignore that, and just go on to using that set of quotations to write out one of the essay's body paragraphs with a main idea that supports this sample thesis. You must use all 3 quotations, but you may use only a small quotation if you wish. Remember that you have to integrate your quotations. You can't simply leave a quotation standing on its own. You need to introduce it, and you need to take a piece of that quotation and put it into your own sentence using one of the 4 methods that we described in that spider's thread symbolism and quotation integration sheet. So try to select one body paragraph. So either body paragraph 1 using these quotations or body paragraph 2 using these quotations. Now, you can either go back a few seconds and take a look at the 3 quotations that I provided and start building the body paragraph by pausing the video and developing the body paragraph around these, or you can go to the handout that's available in the Distributed Documents tab, the module for this week, and develop the body paragraph using these exemplars. Now, once you've done that, I'd like you to return to this video and then look at the sample essay on John Collier's The Chaser that I have posted both in the Distributed Documents tab and here. I'm going to elaborate on the way in which I've structured this body paragraph, and in fact this entire essay, and discuss the development of arguments in that response. Now, as I said, we're going to take a look at a sample essay on John Collier's The Chaser. We're going to break down each of the components of an essay, the introduction, the body paragraphs, and the conclusion. And I will also post a copy of this file for you to review at your leisure. One thing that you should know about this essay is that the body paragraphs have been broken down through colored highlighting, indicating what each sentence and what each component of the body paragraph actually does, how it functions. So when we get to the body paragraph, I'll discuss the code that I'm using for the colors. For an introduction, you'll remember that the basic Introduction to College English class essay structure follows a 7-sentence format. You don't necessarily need to use this format. There are other structures, but this is a good starting point. You start out at the widest part of the pyramid by essentially introducing the topic in the most general terms. And then as the reverse pyramid progresses through each of the individual components of the introduction, you become progressively more specific in what it is that you're trying to say, until you reach the most specific component, that is the thesis statement. So again, we have standard MLA formatting, left-aligned text, centered title. So the components of a 7-sentence introduction are labeled here. The first sentence which introduces your paper, the second sentence that provides more detail or elaborates or expands on it, the third sentence that connects your subject to your story, mentioning the name of the author and the title of the story, the fourth sentence introduces your first supporting point, then your fifth and sixth sentences introduce the second and third, and then your seventh sentence is the thesis itself. As you go on, you can expand and contract different components in this basic structure in order to develop it further and to better match your arguments. But for the time being, as we're introducing the concept of an essay at the college level, we're going to be discussing and employing this kind of format. So I start out at my most general. Life is often defined by contrasting experiences and emotions. Now I'm going to get a little bit more specific and define what I mean by that, or develop that in more precise detail. People are driven by the extremes of love and hatred, joy and sorrow, and hope and despair. Now that I've focused in on these ideas of the generative contrast, I've provided specific examples of it, so I'm getting a little bit more specific, I can bring the story in. I can mention the author of the story, the title of the story, and then tie it into this idea that I'm developing of contrasts between experiences. John Collier's short story, The Chaser, contrasts cynicism and idealism. The symbol of the love potion, now I'm going to list off my main ideas. The symbol of the love potion conveys that optimism is without value. Worse yet, Alan Austin's idealism leads him to his doom, showing that idealistic views can be ultimately destructive. On the other hand, the old man's cynicism gives him power, allowing him to exploit fools like Alan. Thus, Collier shows that cynicism allows people to live more fulfilling and successful lives than does idealism. So I have my most specific sentence, the thesis statement, and everything that I do in the development of these 3 points from sentences 4, 5, and 6 is going to be a means by which I will prove that thesis statement. Here we have the first body paragraph. It's an incredibly simplistic and straightforward body paragraph. There isn't a great deal of nuance or in-depth, innovative analysis, but remember that the purpose of this activity is not to present you with the ideal essay that's going to get you a 99, because 100 is always impossible in an English class. It's to show you what the basic structure of an essay, and by extension, the basic structure of each component of an essay would be. So the color coordination or color coding for this example. In the sample body paragraphs that we have in this essay, gray represents the main idea. It's the topic sentence, what you're going to be proving, or what it is you have proven in the last sentence through this paragraph. Yellow is the claim that I'm going to make, the thing that I'm going to try to prove through my development and through my elaboration. Green is the example. It's the integrated quotation that I'm going to use to analyze and prove this claim that I make. Red is the actual analysis. Sometimes, in the most advanced forms of essays, all these colors get blended together into a kind of mush. That can work so long as you know what you're doing, so long as you have this conscious intention to tie together these things and integrate analysis even into the introduction and the presentation of examples. You can do that. What we're looking at here is essentially the necessary components of an essay's body paragraph. So we're separating them out very clearly so that we can understand what we're doing at each step. We're avoiding any possibility of introducing summary by really highlighting what it is that we're doing at each point in this body paragraph. As you continue to develop your essay writing skills, these things are going to become a little bit less, shall we say, bifurcated, or a little bit less strictly defined or delineated, because you'll begin to be able to work in different components and negotiate or transition between them in a little more smooth and organic fashion. So, Collier uses the love potion to show that idealism is ultimately worthless. The naive form of love that Alan craves, represented by the bottle of love potion, is cheap. So this is what I want to prove, that this form of love that Alan desires is cheap, it's worthless. Now I need to give an example of that, or an example from the text that I can use to interpret in order to show that's the case. The shop owner responds to Alan's final request for the love potion by opening the drawer in the kitchen table and taking out a tiny, rather dirty-looking file, which he sells for just $1. So remember, I've got my integrated quotations. They're not standing on their own. I put them into my own sentence. I have done so in a grammatically correct way. And then I can move into an analysis. I have to show how this quotation is an example of symbolism and how it helps me to prove this claim. Given that the love potion is kept in a small, dirty container, the story conveys that the kind of idealistic love that it inspires is tainted. In turn, idealism itself is valueless. So I'm taking that argument, I'm building it, I'm taking it a step forward, and I develop it point by point logically. Now I have another claim that includes therein a transition into the next point. Indeed, it's completely worthless when compared to things that are really valuable. Now I need a piece of evidence to show that there's a comparison between the worthless nature of the love that Alan desires and the things that are of true value. And I have to use, because I've stated in my topic sentence, symbolism in order to prove it. In contrast to the dollar love potion, the glove cleaner or life cleaner is $5,000, never a penny less. The glove cleaner, a deadly poison, represents the true weight of life and death themselves. They are the only truly important things measured by the high cost of the life cleaner. And then I restate my main idea. Having demonstrated something, I tie everything together, bring it back to that main idea. Thus, the symbol of the love potion shows that idealistic beliefs about anything, including love, are unimportant. And by proving this main idea that, well, idealistic beliefs about anything, including love, are unimportant, I have helped to prove this thesis statement that Collier shows that cynicism allows people to live more fulfilling and successful lives than does idealism, because we know idealism is worthless, so how could it lead to a fulfilling life? So that is the relationship between your main idea stated in the topic sentence and your thesis statement, right? The main idea helps you to prove it. From here, we move on to the next paragraph. The next paragraph's topic sentence has to include something of a transition. It has to build off the ideas that you've developed in the previous paragraph. So here, I begin this topic sentence by saying these kinds of idealistic beliefs define Alan Austin, causing him to suffer. So I've already said there are these idealistic beliefs. I've got this idea of idealistic beliefs being worthless, and then I move in by bringing that idea of idealistic beliefs into my discussion of the next topic sentence. So it serves as a nice transition from what I've already established in the first paragraph. In fact, it builds off the ideas in that first paragraph, so that I couldn't really make the argument that I do about Alan Austin and his idealistic beliefs if I didn't have that first paragraph already showing that they're worthless. I take it one step forward. Here's the consequence of adopting beliefs or a worldview that is fundamentally valueless. It causes Alan to suffer. If idealistic beliefs cause Alan to suffer, then we can abstract out the moral principle there that people live more fulfilling and successful lives when they are cynical rather than idealistic. So we follow the same basic process here. We have the main idea, we have a claim, evidence, analysis. Transition and claim, evidence, analysis, and then the final sort of capstone comment that concludes the body paragraph. Here, we have two examples or 2 points. You can have 3, and in a longer essay, you're certainly encouraged to have 3. However, 2 or 3 are fine, so long as they are logically developed, you prove your argument, you have clear, incisive interpretations of your evidence, all these things that are necessary to the formation of a successful body paragraph. As long as you have that, you're fine, whether you have 2 examples or 3. This body paragraph uses the sample quotations that I provided in the activity that began this video. So, Alan's naivety leads him to hold a childish view of love that hurts him. So I need to show that his view of love is, well, childish, and that it harms him. When the old man describes the potion, notice I've introduced the quotation by setting context, by indicating when this quotation appears in the story, who is speaking at this moment, and the like, and I've also integrated my quotation here. He says that the woman who drinks it will want to know all you do, all that has happened to you during the day, every word of it. She will want to know what you are thinking about, why you smile suddenly, why you are looking sad. Alan responds, that is love. So my analysis of this point, all to tie back to proving this claim, and in turn to prove that Alan Austin's idealism causes him to suffer. Alan has an infantile perspective on love. He believes that such unnatural devotion is normal and healthy. It is impossible for him to recognize how horrible it will be to have someone constantly asking him where he is and what he's doing. So his idealism blinds him to the reality of the situations that he embraces. Next claim, as I transition from the last one, this idealistic view of love will cause him to suffer in the future. Notice that I have a kind of transitional statement here. I've referred back to what I've just proven. So I'm using what I've proven here to move into the next point. I'm building on what I've proven in this first example in order to actually make a point later on in this paragraph, the next point in this paragraph, that I couldn't have made without the first point in the paragraph already. This idealistic view of love will cause him to suffer in the future. Talking about the life cleaner, the old man says, one has to be older than you are to indulge in that sort of thing. One has to save up for it. But Alan can only think of the love potion. So, some of that is quotation, some of that is very precise and targeted summary of how Alan responds. It's not summary to like fill space in the essay. It's summary or paraphrase of what happens in the story so that I can analyze it. And I include only as much, only half of a sentence, as I need to actually present the analysis that I'm going to use. The old man implies that Alan, as an older man, will need the life cleaner to kill his overbearing wife, but Alan is unable to understand that he will become a murderer one day. Now, I tie things together, I bring everything back to that main idea, building on this example that I've just presented. Alan's simple-minded vision of love, his idealism, has blinded into reality and its dangers, leading to his destruction on a moral level in this case, right? A miserable life and an immoral end, although not to his life. So then the next paragraph follows the same format. You can review that on your own time. If you have any questions about that body paragraph or the formation of a body paragraph, topic sentences, anything else pertaining to those first 2 components of the essay, please reach out to me. Lastly, we'll look at the conclusion. The conclusion restates your main idea and your main arguments, and then it launches into a kind of elaboration on the implications of the argument that you've presented in this essay. It's a time or a place in which you can illustrate the significance of the argument you've presented, the relevance of it to a contemporary context, or suggest some way that the argument could be expanded. Thus, Collier conveys that pessimism leads people to live more content lives. Restate the thesis statement. Then I restate the main ideas. He demonstrates the valueless nature of idealism by presenting the symbol of a love potion. The negative consequences of a life based on such idealism are shown through the characterization of the insipid and self-destructive Alan Austin. And finally, the old man is able to lead a materially successful life free from pain because of cynicism. Now, after I've restated that argument, I can launch into the most important part of the conclusion. In a way, I don't even need this restatement of your main ideas. Right? They should be included because that's the format that's presented to us and that we're required to teach at this level. However, what I'm really interested in and what gives you the opportunity to really think about the argument you've presented and its relevance to the real world is this next section of the conclusion that I would submit should be the most expansive and extensive. You don't want to just offer a kind of question. You want to offer a thoughtful analytical commentary on the material that you presented and the argument that you've advanced. Oftentimes, that takes the form of a reflection on the relevance of the position that the story has taken, its values, its presumptions, and a connection of those things to modern society. So much of modern society is oriented around the pursuit of happiness, and the American ethos itself, the American set of values and the character of American society holds that people can achieve their dreams with enough hard work. If Collier is correct, these things will lead to nothing but disappointment and lack of fulfillment because they are themselves idealistic. In that case, a widespread change in society's views on the world in order to embrace a more dour outlook will only be beneficial. So I don't leave off with a question. I make a comment, an observation based on, well, the argument that's been presented and proven in this essay, and then social trends or something like that. So you could apply it to gender roles, you could apply it to the way we structure our society, some kind of political incident. You want to keep it focused, you want to keep it well connected to the ideas that you presented, you don't want to go too far afield. But this is the opportunity to expand outward and to demonstrate to your readers how the arguments in this story are actually relevant to their daily lives. Now, there are other different ways in which you could structure your conclusion. You could include here, rather than an elaboration on the implications of this argument and its application to society, on the way in which you might explore some other element of the story in order to develop this argument further. Maybe there's a major point that you didn't address in the body of your paper. You don't want to discuss it here. You don't want to elaborate on it here, but you could indicate that that is something that could be discussed in a future essay or an expansion on this one. Or you might note that there's something that this essay has failed to take into account. There's something that in the story may run or appear to run counter to the arguments that you've presented. In that case, you could say in this section of the conclusion that I've highlighted here that there's this aspect of the story that doesn't seem to accord with the material that was presented here, and it seems to run counter to the argument. However, here's why it doesn't. So offer a very slight commentary on the way in which you might address that argument and an expansion on these ideas that didn't quite fit in the body of your essay. You don't want to develop it fully in any way because, of course, that's not the purpose of the conclusion, but you might gesture towards it, indicate that you have thought about these issues and that you can bring them to bear, or that you could bring them into consideration in a future work. Again, if you have any questions about essay format and this sample essay that has been posted, please contact me, and then I would be happy to address them with you.